It's time for the unofficial 40. Soonerscoop.com's very official recruiting podcast featuring Soonerscoop.com recruiting publisher Josh McCuistion. Get your recruiting fix from the leader in Sooner recruiting. It's the unofficial 40 with your hosts, Soonerscoop.com publishers Carey Murdoch and Josh McCuistion. Eddie Radosevich.
And we are back. Hey, everybody. It's Carey Murdoch here with you, along with Josh McCuistion, Eddie Radosevich, and Joe Duvall for another edition of the unofficial 40 podcast. And coming to you a little bit earlier than we did last week. Apologize for that Friday broadcast last week, late Friday broadcast. But we're here early on Thursday to talk to you about West Virginia. And guys, so much going on this week. Eddie, let's start with you. I know, this week just kind of going to practice and thinking that you got a road game coming up. I got to do laundry today still. It's not fun. It's my theory. You become your own mother the longer you stay single. So I'm being mom today for a little bit. But then you have breaking news, and it just kind of screws your whole week a little bit and screwed my nap schedule. I've had no nap so far this week. I'm dying. I'm going to get a nap today. But the biggest thing that happened this week is obviously week after week after week, we ask about Charles Walker. It finally came to a head this week, and God, I'm so glad it did.
Yeah, and it was really kind of interesting that it started on Monday with the end of Matt Dimon's career. And Bob Stoops kind of just threw that out there at the oh by the way kind of thing.
I tell you what, here's Bob Stoops doing his oh by the way thing on Monday at his press conference.
Bob, Matt Dimon, is that an injury that ends his career, or has he just decided not to return?
It's multiple issues. The injury has led to some other things, and in the end of the day, it's just not working anymore.
So that was Matt Dimon, what the hell is wrong with you?
Something obviously happened, but then, the Charles Walker situation finally came to a head, and I think that it didn't surprise anybody that this is kind of the way that it ends, and it was probably, I think somebody put it as the worst kept secret in Norman. But
let me go back to Matt Dimon for a second, because and bring in Josh here, because Josh, I know you were always close being down in Houston. You were always close to Matt coming out of high school. You and I have talked a lot about it. Like, that was the thing. Bob announced Matt Dimon is not going to return, and he's done playing football at OU. He's not going to be back next year either. And you started to think, oh my God, is this another concussion thing? And so that's why I asked him that question. Like, is it an injury? Why he's not, is he giving up football completely? Is he just here at OU? And then for him to say that, it just wasn't working anymore. You're thinking, okay, this is much more than just about injuries. And Josh, you and I had talked about that, just trying to make heads or tails of it. Matt Dimon's just always kind of been an interesting guy.
Well, you guys are there every day. You know how it is much better than even I do, that if Bob says things in a peculiar way, there's a reason. He doesn't just he's not coy to be coy. Like, he's coy because, and I don't know if it's like, I want you to look into this, but I can't point you down that road, but maybe you should ask some questions here. I never know the answer to that part of it. But yeah, Matt's always been a guy that really just kind of did his own thing and marched to his own beat. And I think that was always evident somewhat in his recruitment, but I think he was kind of, you always notice the guys that are like the elite Rivals 100 guys that are like, oh man, they got a big personality, and they're a little harder to, really know and kind of understand. And I think Matt was kind of that way, that he was very easy to talk to and very outgoing, but I think because he wasn't the high profile recruit, sometimes people miss that. And then I know as you guys got to know him going through team stuff, Matt was always, you always felt like something was bubbling under the surface, not like I don't know that I would say it was a bad thing. You just felt like there were things at work with Matt that maybe you didn't understand. I don't know if you guys got that. It was always something that I picked up on.
I always liked talking to Matt, and he always seemed to be very, he was very generous with his answers and things. And I think probably the fact that, Josh, you established a relationship, so early with him. He knew we worked together, and we worked for Sooner Scoop. But I could ask him kind of hard questions and he'd be thoughtful about it. Whether it was leadership or, after he got kicked out of the game last year in that Baylor game. But yeah, there's always kind of like when you're talking to Matt, he's looking at you and you're kind of wondering like,
are you looking right through me?
Yeah, like are you going to kill me? Like, is there something something wrong with me that you just don't like?
There was times where he got into it with me on Twitter, and I was kind of like, man, the next time that I see him, I wonder if he's gonna like swing at me or something.
He told me one time I said something, I kind of blew something up, and he just tweeted at me. I think he said, "Do less." Do less. Which I loved. I thought was funny. Yeah. So it was just that. Yeah, I mean, I thought he was a good guy. I liked him, but he's obviously got some demons or something running around.
He's one of my favorite people we've gotten to talk to all year, because a lot of guys, you ask them, they're immediately thinking, okay, how can I answer this where I don't get in trouble? How can I give the most cliche answer here? But Matt was never that guy. You ask him a question, you could see it in his eyes. He's going to think about it. He's going to give you his own interpretation of an answer, and that's exactly kind of what you're looking for. You're looking for guys to show their personality, and he would do that. And part of you wonders, guys that kind of have that bright light, sometimes there might be other things going on with their brain that you're not quite sure about.
Well, it's a shame. And Josh, I know you've gotten to know him, really well. It's a shame to see his career end like this.
It is, and like I said, I don't want my comments to be taken wrong. I think the world of Matt. I think he's a great kid. He's always been awesome to me to deal with. But you guys talked about it. Like the perfect example for me was the year after he graduates. Rodney Anderson's going into his senior year, and Katy loses their 5-year unbeaten streak in district. They lose it at a game I was actually at against the Woodlands, and Matt tweets at Katy football at Rodney. He's like, what the hell is going on? He's furious. And I think it was the night before, OU played, West Virginia or something. It was a fairly important game up ahead, and Matt's, torching his old high school on Twitter. So, he's just one of those guys, like Joe was saying, he's not going to pull punches. He doesn't know how to do it.
He's kind of like a smaller. He's kind of like a younger version of me.
Who's that?
Matt Dimon.
Matt Dimon?
On Twitter. Just attacks.
Attack.
You don't really know why. Well, the interesting thing about the week was it didn't stop there. I mean, Charles Walker, as we talked about earlier, move on to talking about him, but I want to take you back to after the TCU game when Bob Stoops had, he was talking about something else, and we were trying to move on to ask him another question. He does that thing that he does, which is he circles back, and he wants to throw something out there that he before he forgets, and he threw out this little nugget about Charles Walker after the TCU game.
Yeah, no, I forgotten, and we'll also be without Charles Walker. He said he got a concussion sometime in the game the other night, so he'll be out.
Guess he said he got a concussion sometime in the game, so he'll be out.
That was the first clue that something weird's going on.
And this was the Wednesday kind of the beat writer meeting that we have where there's no cameras allowed. It's just the main beat writers where this happened. And I don't think I thought about it at the time, but the longer I thought about it, when you see the transcription and you read over it and you're like, guess he said he thought he got a concussion. And you're just like, I don't remember him leaving the game. I don't remember anything. And then I kind of got some information behind the scenes that he was concerned about concussions. His family was concerned about concussions. And you got to remember, this is also the same time that Tay Evans, Daniel Brooks. I think Daniel Brooks actually happened right about the same time.
A week later.
Maybe a week later. And the Tay Evans was actually that Monday when they announced he was done at his press conference. So, and then you had Jamal Danley before that. So you had 3 guys, and it's a little bit of a freak out about, oh my God, you remember the fans were going nuts about what is going on? Why is our medical staff so hard on people for concussions? I mean, there's a lot of blame going around.
How can you feel confident enough to blame somebody who has a medical degree that they went and got if they say something about a kid who can't play? I don't know how you can sit at home I mean, you can judge football, you can worry about play calling, you can do all that's fine. That's your as a fan. But when it comes to medical situations, I don't get the armchair quarterbacking. How do you know? How do you know what's going inside these guys' head? I don't get it.
Are you saying from the perspective of the player, like that you don't think they should be criticized?
I think it'd be hard, or even the medical personnel. If you're saying that fans are upset, saying, are we being too soft, keeping these guys out, or are medical personnel being too stringent with these concussion protocols? Even if you're blaming a kid for if you think he's, not playing tough or whatever, I think all of that stuff is just, I don't like it. It makes me feel uncomfortable, to be honest with you, because it's a medical situation. I don't know how you can have any perspective or insight into what's going on in somebody else's body that they or their doctors know.
Oh, I can tell. I know everything.
It makes me uncomfortable when a guy quits on his teammates.
Well, and here's the thing. So
there we go.
So all this stuff is going on. You hear all this stuff like, well, Bob said he reported that he got a concussion after the game. And you kind of hear the stuff like he's having symptoms and he's not really has a concussion, but he really is looking toward the NFL and he's concerned about getting more concussions because he's already got symptoms. And so this whole dance goes forever and ever. And what I thought was really interesting, guys, is like last home game was Baylor. And you see Tay Evans out there with his jersey on, with his team. His career is over because of concussions. And he's being a part of the team. I never saw Matt Dimon, he's been basically kicked off the team. He would be out there with his teammates. Matt Romar would be out there with his teammates. I never saw Charles Walker out there on game days.
I don't think he was. And that's something that usually I try to pay pretty close attention to is who's down there on the sidelines, whether it be a hurt guy or just a guy that is standing down there, not suited out. And I never saw him. So it was always kind of weird that he was never down there. Or, I think I saw him one time at practice, and that was a couple weeks ago. And that was just kind of in passing as we were getting ready to do
It's like, how long do you have to sit in a dark room?
Yeah.
Really? You can help. People have talked about this for years and years. You can help your team by just being there, by just talking to the young. Talking to Devontae Lampkin. Devontae Lampkin tweeted out, something in support of him. He could have been there helping Devontae Lampkin, hey, if this happens, do this, or helping out with, if he sees something maybe that a coach doesn't see.
The one thing that I've always, I don't know, I guess I'm kind of in between. I understand that the quitting on the teammates part of it. And, to Joe's point, I guess to an extent, I kind of understand the thought process in, if it's the idea out there that Charles Walker has one concussion left in his career. I don't know how they.
I don't think he does, though.
Okay.
I think this is a situation where he's had a concussion or two, or who knows how many. I don't know if he had a concussion against TCU. I really don't. Mm-hmm. I tried to get into that with Bob yesterday, and I'll play some of that for you. But I think it's more like, well, I don't want to get any more concussions in college. I might only have 5 left.
Yeah. So
let me save those for the NFL where I'm getting paid for it.
I think that's what Charles Walker is thinking. And now, is that kind of a shitty way to think about it as a teammate? I guess. I think it is.
At least we're over 10 minutes into the show before you did that.
Well, it is what it is. I have to not censor myself when I come in this room, but you know how I talk.
So, yeah, you're a longshoreman. So all this stuff is floating around, all these rumors, and we finally get, what day was this, Eddie? Tuesday or Monday? It was Tuesday. It was
Tuesday when it came out.
So,
because you broke the story.
We broke it on Tuesday. And so then Mike Houck, who is the sports information director of strategic communications, he comes in and he gives us a statement, which is Charles Walker has elected to not play the rest of the season and will work towards the NFL draft.
They were very careful, too, with how they worded it to us.
And as soon as he said elected, I thought, oh, that's crappy. Like, he could play, but he's choosing not to play. Like, that's the worst possible decision you could make, to me.
Well, and that's the other thing, too, is this.
He can play. That's the thing. He can freaking play. He can go out there and play and help his teammates win a Big 12 championship. They're playing West Virginia on the road and Oklahoma State at home. He could make a difference, yet he chooses not to play.
Not to mention it's a national television game on Saturday night, and then will likely be a national televised game for Bedlam in 2 weeks. And it's not like he had a season that for the last 2 years, it's not like he's put up numbers that just scream, that he should be a first-round pick or anything. I mean, I think Kuiper had him as the top defensive tackle coming out next year, beginning of the season, just because there was a lot of expectations, and that's all that has been around Charles Walker.
I got to play something for Mel Kiper.
Let me tell you why I suck.
Okay, so let me just go through. So Mike Howe comes in, tells us that we're getting ready to talk to Mike Stoops, and we ask Mike Stoops about him electing not to play.
What were your conversations like with Charles Walker before he decided to leave?
I've had none. No.
Mike Howe had told us that he elected to sit out the rest of the season. Is that, that's obviously got to be disappointing for a coach, isn't it?
Sure. I mean, you quitting on your teammates it's hard to, it's hard to take as a coach. That's everything we stand for, is our commitment to one another, and for whatever reason that wasn't there for him, and he thought this was a better avenue, so you'd have to ask him for those. Just from a coach's perspective, you don't see this happen very, very often. This is a unique situation, and I don't know what the details are of it. You would have to ask him, or I'm sure he'll put out a release or tweet something, but like I say, we've managed it, and wish him well, and hopefully he can, get his football life together. He's a talented player, and just disappointed that the way it ended here after such a promising start to his career, and not seeing it finish in a positive way is disappointing. I think personally as a coach, and I know his players probably feel the same way. We've come, he's come a long way, but there's everyone has reasons, and you would have to. I'm not going to try to project what his reasons were, but like I say, I don't. We haven't talked much. He hasn't been around much, in and out. So.
And that right there, like, he hasn't been around much. And Mike only used the quit word one time, quitting.
A story that has just probably taken on a life of its own in the last 48 hours, I would say. Wouldn't you agree with everything that's being thrown at the Oklahoma coaching staff? The national media jumps onto it with the narrative of, this is good. The players finally have a voice. They have stood up, to the tyranny of being on scholarship and getting their grants or what is it, their stipends. People conveniently forget. It's like there was all this stuff about, players need to get more money. They get more money, and then people just conveniently forget that they're getting extra money for playing now. I know it's not millions, but let's face it, most of these kids aren't going to be making millions. You read Mike Florio's article yesterday, and
his was the worst.
It seemed like that OU coaches are making these guys go through 2 days during the middle of the summer. During the middle of the season, and everything is just against the player in Norman. And
I said this on the board too. Look, the way that they handled Jamal Danley, Tay Evans, Daniel Brooks, they were as classy as they could be. They said everything that they needed to say in terms of, we hate this for them. It's a medical decision. Their family was brought in on it. We hate to lose them, but it's in their best interest to give up football. They're fine with it. They I don't want to say they welcome them leaving with open arms, if that makes any sense. With Charles Walker, they came in and said, hey, this guy elected not to play anymore. There was no, we feel really bad. It's a terrible tragedy. No, it was this guy, and Mike Stoops is going to be more candid. This guy quit.
Yeah.
Yeah, they're allowed to feel that way. I think they're totally allowed to feel that way, especially if they believe that Walker could play more than he's letting on, or that the risks aren't as big as maybe he thinks they are. But you have to hold Mike to the same standards you hold, Austin Kendall to. He can't call Charles Walker a quitter there, knowing what's going to come down the pike. You're going to create a distraction. He can. His tone was good enough. You understood exactly where Mike Stoops was on that issue without using the word quit. And I think that he
But he did, though. He quit.
But when you have,
he couldn't play and he quit.
But when you have an issue of head injuries, and especially with the national consciousness the way it is on those deals, you're gonna have backlash when Mike Stoops uses that word. And if your whole thing is you have to keep your players from going out in front of the media and giving any sort of a distraction-y quote that'll distract from the team, then you have to hold Mike to the same standard. I mean,
I don't have a problem with what Mike said. Look, I'll say this. Adrian Peterson broke his collarbone his junior year, could have just sat out, rushed to come back against, I think, Iowa State, a game that didn't even matter. He knew he was going to be one of the top picks in the draft. He couldn't wait to get back out on the football field. He wasn't worried about further injuries or I know concussions become a deal that wasn't around when Adrian was playing, but these are I'm sorry, I don't blame Mike Stoops for calling him a quitter. These are people that have been around Charles Walker that have convinced him that his best path to the league is to quit college. I mean, that's what it is. He quit college.
If he wanted to leave so bad, he should have done it last year. I mean, there's no doubt that he wanted to leave.
Well, he couldn't. He needed to get wrist surgery, I'm sure, that the school paid for.
Yeah.
So he could improve his ability to punch. And he knew he had physical problems last year at the end of the season.
Josh, what has he done this year that would make him think that, I've put enough on tape to even be drafted?
Well, that's the thing that's crazy. Like, I keep seeing play, like even teammates, which is, I kind of want to dive into that with you guys a little bit. Like, it seems like that locker room's got to be a little bit interesting right now. And because I kind of agree with what Joe's saying. Like, it's about what matters to OU. Do they care about that national perception that he probably shouldn't have used the words he used? Quit is just so strong, and it was going to piss people off. And you get the impression watching some of the players that they're on his side in this deal. And so I don't want to make it like, the locker room's divided. I don't feel that way about it. But I can't help but believe there's not a few feelings that are a little raw about it. But as far as Eddie's question, I mean, the thing that blows me away, and I don't think people really realize it, I was looking at Charles Walker's numbers. He's played in 24 games. He has 4 career starts. All 4 came at the beginning of this year. Mm-hmm. He has 13 tackles for loss in his career, 10 of which came last season. What has he done that makes everybody think that on tape he's a first or second rounder? Like, don't get me wrong, and I don't want to make it sound like I'm doubling back. I think Charles Walker is tremendously talented. I have since I first saw his high school tape. But
he was hurt all, his senior year in high school.
Yeah, he's got injury problems going back to his high school career. And then you throw in this whole deal. He keeps tweeting out stuff about, I got to do what's best for my family. And does he I can't believe a player is so tone deaf to what the NFL looks at and what they're evaluating. What does he think when those scouts are coming by all the time to come watch OU practice, and when they come by for the NFL Combine Day and all the stuff, the pro day stuff they do at OU, all those things, they're talking to Bob, they're talking to Mike, they're talking to Jerry Schmidt, they're having all these conversations. They're going to talk to the medical staff, and those people, even if they really like you, they may try to put you in the best light they can, but no coach is going to lie on your behalf. They're just not going to do it. And they clearly think, they clearly have put it out there, they think Charles quit on them. And that's not going to fly with an NFL coach. It's just not. People can point to, like, Jadeveon Clowney. There was always some talk of that his junior year at South Carolina. Well, I hate to break it to Charles, he's not Jadeveon Clowney. Like, that guy could get away with stuff because he is so absurdly talented and has so many physical gifts that nobody else has.
He was the number 1 pick in the draft.
Exactly.
And he took his junior year off.
Terry, your example, Adrian could have gotten away with that because Adrian is so special that there's nothing like him. Charles Walker's a really, really good football player. If he reaches his maximum potential, he's probably a 7 or 8 year NFL guy.
Here's the thing
Adrian
about
Peterson's
it,
going to the Hall of Fame. That's all you can say. And it's going to hurt his draft stock. Like, I was talking to somebody the other day, it was like, if he goes before 5th round, I'd be shocked just because of what people will get from his personnel, kind of his personnel files.
Look, here's the thing about the NFL. you are a commodity. You are a piece of meat. They're paying for you to come in and produce. And that's all they give a damn about. Now, you have guys that have your talent ability that are from all over the country that might have as much potential or more than you have, that produced more on the college level than you did, and they didn't quit on their team. Who are they going to take? You're falling behind every one of those people on the board. And the other thing is this. You ever been around an NFL coach? Those are some ruthless bastards, man. There's no flowers and unicorns in the NFL. Greg Williams, there are Greg Williams all over the NFL. The guy that got in trouble for the Bounty Gate for the Saints. Mike Zimmer? Oh my God. You think Mike Zimmer would ever want anything to do with somebody like Charles Walker?
But Carey, that's perfect too, because you're talking about defensive coordinators, guys that are directly going to be involved with Charles. Those are probably the nastiest breed of NFL coaches. Those dudes just do not give a damn.
Yeah, but Charles would get to go home to his house that they pay for, and he would give his mom could get to go home to a house that they paid for instead of whatever situation.
Look, off of a practice squad salary?
Yeah, 6 figures minimum, and he's not going to be a practice squad player for the first few years. And if I think he might.
He could absolutely be a practice.
He could be, but
for the first. Right. Look, you have to have 3 years in the league before you get your second contract. He's going to go in probably as an unrestricted free agent where he could be cut at any time. If he takes off a practice because he said his head hurts, they'll just cut him.
Here's my question. Do you not think he understands those risks? I mean,
no.
He might not. Does he not understand those risks? Because if he does...
I don't think he has any idea what the real world is like.
Okay, well, let's just assume that he does. Well, maybe he does understand these risks. And then wouldn't that make you start to think, well, maybe there is an issue. Maybe he is concerned about his playing career ending at Oklahoma when he sees guys that he just played with have their careers end. And now here's the deal. I think the big concern here is he hasn't been around, which leads you to think he won't be around in the future, which leads to the quitting thing. If he said, you know what, I really am not sure about how many more hits I can take, how many more injuries I can take. I just have to maximize my earning power for my family in the future. I love my teammates. I love my team. I'm going to be around. I'm going to help them as much as possible. I think that would have made things a lot different than this kind of, it all seemed kind of shadowy and in the dark, and which leaves people to, I think of it as in a nefarious terms.
He's not capable of having this dialogue. I mean, he's throwing up cryptic tweets about decisions for his daughter. He hasn't talked to Mike Stoops at all throughout this process. He hasn't been around the team. He knows he's doing wrong. He's hiding. He hasn't been at games.
That's the thing. And Joe, like, you kind of led me right. Like, I get it. If he is concerned, like, I understand that's a completely valid concern. But the reality is, if that's what it is, you're still going to be around your team. You're still going to do all the stuff. Like, I'm leaving for the NFL and I'm going to go prepare for the draft. Well, if you're that concerned, or like oh, my livelihood could be in danger here. You know, my ability just to function could be in danger here. How are you just like, well, I'm done with OU, but I'm going to the draft? Like, you can't have that both ways. Like, if you want to say, I'm concerned, I need to sit out for a while, then why can't you be around the team? Like, the team is just not your focus. That's just not what you care about.
Because he knew what he was doing was wrong. He was capable of playing, and he chose not to. And team, that breeds a horrible locker room. If you have people like that, if you have a guy like, if you just refuse to do recruiting stories, I mean, we're not going to be happy with you.
No, I would expect Eddie to, there's something to be burning in my front yard or on my front porch at some point.
Eddie will just put up videos 24/7. Well, I'm sorry we don't have a story with this.
If Eddie stopped giving hot takes on the podcast, we'd probably start to.
Yeah.
I had somebody the other day.
I'm really surprised the word pussy hasn't come out yet today.
It just did.
There you go. Happened.
I don't know if I can call him that yet, because I mean,
I'm not calling him.
We need to move on to somebody that can't beat me up, and then I'll call him a pussy.
The 110-pound wrestler. Eddie's going to stay where he's comfortable.
Okay, well, let's just wrap this up, because, like you said, OU's getting beat up about it in some corners, mainly the national media. So yesterday when I went out to talk to Bob, I just kind of wanted to clear a few things. I wanted to make sure that he had been medically cleared, which Bob said he had. And I wanted to know how long he'd been medically cleared because I thought that was important. And I think people want to know that. And here's me pissing off Bob Stoops yesterday.
I wanted to ask you, just because there's been so much written already today just about Charles' situation, and we never really asked you a whole lot about it.
Yeah, gave a statement. There's no good way of saying any of it, so I'm done with it. I want to talk about guys that are on my team ready to chase a Big 12 championship against another top 12, 13 team, whatever they are. That's what needs to be talked about.
But in terms of just the facts of it, I mean, everybody's kind of confused. I mean, Mike said yesterday that he chose not to return.
That's the facts.
He was
I said that. I said that to Mike, didn't I? I said that in the statement. The statement made that clear, yes.
How long had he been medically cleared?
Well, that's up to the doctors. I'm not sure how long, but so be it.
Is there a chance we can talk to Scott?
We're done with it.
Scott about that?
No, we're not talking about him after this point.
Okay.
Finished.
That's how you piss off Bob Stoops.
And that's how you shut down a subject, too, on Bob's part. He's just like, all right, we're done.
No, I think Barry Trammell came in after that, and he's like, Bob, how thin are you on the defensive line? And so he's like, oh, we've been thin all year. So he was fine after that. I mean, it's one of those things. I feel like I have to be the a-hole sometimes just so it doesn't turn into where, like, Hoover's the only guy just badgering Stoops all the time, or the student reporters.
You can take it.
It doesn't bother me.
You're like Batman. You're the hero we need, right?
Yes, I did this completely just to...
Joe just made a Manly movie reference.
Yeah. Oh,
he's on his game today. He actually made one before the show started.
I did a Usual Suspects drop before the show started. You should have heard it. Yeah,
that's even better. That's strong.
I'm 2 for 2. Let's see if I can make it a winning streak with 3 in a row later on.
You're going to talk about... I don't even want to guess. So, I mean... Look, it's done. Bob is smart enough to just say it does me no good to talk about it. If people want to rip him, he's just going to let people rip him and brush it. He's pretty good about that. But it pisses him off. I got him to say piss the other day, too. That was pretty good.
Yeah, what was that about? Oh, about the home win streak?
It was like we never asked him about winning his 100th game at home. And the fact that he's 109 at home is just unbelievable.
Crazy.
And I was like... You've got to be impressed when you look. He was like, I've never seen that number before. I was like, okay, well, if I write 109 on a piece of paper and set it in front of you, you got to be impressed. He's like, I'm pissed off at the 9 we didn't win. That's I do a Stoops impersonation. I don't know why I didn't do it.
Squirrely Bob.
He has that tone just about him where you can sound agitated, and if you're not ready for it, you can kind of
fold.
You can be taken aback.
Oh, that's definitely that's just Youngstown steel belt.
You just got to stay in your ground.
Yeah, you would think that he's yelling, but he's really not.
It's very difficult to do, but I've been doing this for a long time. I can do it. But I do love, like, Hoover can do it. Sittler could do it when he was around. Trammell has done it before.
Wonder how Isaac and Drake stack up in the putting up with it.
I bet they drive him insane.
Oh, just
I bet they're the only two that just frazzle him at some point.
I heard a story once that they'll come back from games and Bob will start giving them pointers. Hey, on this play, you can do this, you can shade him, and that they just basically laugh him off. That they don't listen to a single thing he says, which to me is hilarious. That he's a millionaire coach, but he can't get his own kids to listen to his advice.
All right, so
shut up, Dad.
Are we done with Charles Walker and Matt Romar or Matt Dimon?
It is good that I think they will get Matt Romar back in the rotation this week.
No, I think he's definitely back. I mean, West Virginia. I guess we can move on to talk about that one a little bit, or do we want to hit up some recruiting first, Josh? Because I know there's been some activity today or the past couple of days.
Yeah, it has been finally. I think for the first time in. I bet it's been since almost the start of the season when OU handed out more than one offer in the course of a week. Like, it's just been kind of a little slow drain forever. But for those that don't know, Oklahoma made their first in-state offer since I lead myself into a stat that I'm not prepared to give, so of course I did that. But it's been a while. Let's put it that way. With Cameron Curl, the defensive back kind of athlete from Muskogee, and I know we were talking before the show, guys. I think it's pretty clear that they see Curl as a defensive back. There's some people that kind of just want to take him as an athlete and let his position work itself out. I had a chance to see him in the first game of the season against Midwest City, And really in that game, he shined more as a receiver, but that's partially due to the fact Midwest City just runs the ball, and there's not a lot of chance for him to make plays in the air. But he's 6'1", 6'2", probably about 180 pounds, very rangy, athletic guy. Actually, was offered by Ole Miss yesterday, so that kind of gives you an idea of what his senior season's been like, and he's been a guy that's impressed a lot of people. But what's most interesting, kind of from a general perspective, is I think Oklahoma's kind of shifting how they're looking at some things in the defensive backfield. I don't want to give too much away. We're going to have some stuff in the scoop tomorrow. But I think maybe you're seeing some shift in both in how they look at a few players and secondly, where the numbers are going to align. Like I think there had been talk for a while that it was going to be, just one one corner and one safety. And I don't know that that's exactly how that's going to play out, particularly with a few guys, Oklahoma moving their focus on how they see them in the defense.
Now, Josh, what does this mean with Midwest City safety Evan Fields? Now, I know that Oklahoma had told him that he was their number 2 safety on their board behind Okudah. So now that doesn't look to be the case.
Yeah, that looks like – and I can't help but wonder, Joe, and you and I talked a little bit about it before the show, if – over the last few weeks, we've seen Oklahoma playing a lot more with Caleb Kelly opposite of Obo Okoronkwo, where they're playing more of a traditional true 3-4 setup than that situation that we talked about early in the year where it was Obo and Will Johnson trying to, play an outside linebacker spot that he's just not suited for. I can't help but wonder if this is a Oklahoma making a true commitment to that 3-4 front rather than kind of a 3-3-5. And if that's the case, then it makes sense because Cameron Curl is more of a pure safety as to where Evan Fields, and I know you agree, is a guy that fits more as a nickelback, can come, play the flats, is going to be very good against the run, is a bigger, kind of more compact guy, while Curl is kind of rangy. He can play some center field for you. I think it's just maybe a sign of where Oklahoma's going with their defensive backfield.
Yeah, I was going to say the same thing, Josh. Curl is a guy, if you want someone back there playing the ball, reading the quarterback, while it's in the air, moving in space, that's good. That's what Curl would be better at than Fields. Now, if you want to stick with the Will Johnson type or what Stephen Parker was doing when he was at nickel, then to me Evan Fields always made more sense because he can play in the box. He has that bigger frame, more stout. He's shorter, but he's more compact. He can hang with slot receivers. He can hang with tight ends, and he can keep it physical in the box. But if they're moving away from that, if they're going to traditional 3-4, Evan Fields can't play linebacker for OU.
I think this team is always going to be greedy when it comes to personnel because when you've got a Kansas State in the league, when you're possibly going to face an Ohio State. West Virginia, they're more of a run-based, offense than they are a pass, at least with Skylar Howard at quarterback. You need to have some versatility. And I think the thing is Caleb Kelly, a 5-star athletic, physical, he gives you that versatility more so than Will Johnson was. If they could get a bigger Will Johnson, I think they'd love to have a bigger Will Johnson. Stephen Parker, I just think that they've learned. You look at Stephen Parker and Ahmad Thomas. Stephen Parker is a guy that can cover receivers every once in a while. He's not a true corner, but he has cover skills. Ahmad Thomas doesn't. Who's playing better in the secondary? It's not even close. Stephen Parker is a much better player in this defense than Ahmad Thomas.
Well, and the crazy thing, Carey, is if you talked about like a bigger Will Johnson, you just brought up the guy who probably is the perfect tailor-made fit for the nickel, and that's Stephen Parker. He is a very natural guy. But because of the way things have worked out, they need him back there at safety.
Yeah. Well, and I don't know. How does the way the season's played out for them, I know you were talking about this a little bit earlier, but how does that fit in with, what they can sell for Okudah?
Well, I think to me, that's the question because, I think it's going to come down to Jordan Thomas because I think more and more, and I don't know how you guys felt, but I thought Jordan Parker probably played his best game of the season last week. I thought he was really good against Baylor, and maybe is starting to take that spot. And
and let's face it, he wasn't playing chop liver out there. You didn't have it. I can't remember who's the receiver that starts with a P, but Zamora and Cannon are both excellent receivers, and Zamora is the biggest receiver I've ever seen in my entire life. He is a massive human being.
And you're absolutely right, Carey. I mean, I think the kid you're talking about is Chris Platt.
That's who.
Baylor, whatever else is happening with talent and recruiting at Baylor, their receivers are fine. They got plenty of talent there. So to do a nice job against those guys, man, that says something. But it's Jordan Thomas. Is Jordan Thomas going to come back? I think we all probably think he should, but that doesn't mean that's going to happen. I mean, we've already talked about one guy that's casting his lot with the NFL draft that doesn't make a whole lot of sense. So, that's if he leaves, then maybe you've got a chance to sell Okudah. Hey, we've got a spot right here for you. Because I think he's more, I think Oklahoma sees him, and I've mentioned this in previous scoops, as kind of a Jalen Ramsey type. Like, wherever we have space to put you, that's where we want you. We just want you on the field, period.
Could that work over a place? I mean, he goes to Ohio State. Can you do this to a defensive back? I know people can do it to quarterbacks or receivers, but can you sell a cornerback, a defensive back on, hey, you come here, you can be the guy in our secondary? Can they pull that off with a secondary guy like Okudah?
I think they can. I think it's a matter of, Jeff, we're going to, whoever, if they're wanting to sell him on corner, Jeff, you're going to be on the number one receiver. You're going to follow Katie Cannon. You're going to follow Shelton Gibson. You're going to follow whoever the number one receiver is. That's your man. James Washington, whatever the case may be, he's your guy. We're going to let you lock him down, and we're going to worry about the other 10 guys in the field because we know you got this. And, I mean, obviously that's hyperbole, but in recruiting, that's what you sell. Yeah. So, I mean, to me, that's what I'm pitching if I'm OU. With Ohio State, they've got 3 guys in their defensive backfield that people are talking about in the NFL draft. And you've got to believe there's a couple more guys coming. So I don't know that they can make that promise like Oklahoma can and be like, look, man, we don't have that guy right now. Ohio State, they may sell him the same thing, but it's probably harder to believe for a kid like that. And as a safety, Oklahoma's flat out got a guy leaving. Ahmad Thomas is gone no matter what. So they've got 2 spots in their secondary. And like I said, I get the impression that Oklahoma is selling him on the idea of, we're going to get you on the field. You are too good of a player to, we're not going to talk about learning the ropes. We're going to get you on the field and let you make plays.
What's interesting is it's kind of the way it's worked out is, talking to Mike Houck at OU, he kind of like apprises us of, what to expect next week after the West Virginia game. OU has the bye week because they take off for the Thanksgiving weekend and then play Oklahoma State. So they're playing at least on championship weekend. But Bob is so focused on recruiting next week that he might not even have a press conference. So they're really hitting the recruiting trail hard as soon as this West Virginia game is over.
Perfect timing, right? I mean, this is I think Eddie and I were talking about this before the show. If Oklahoma beats West Virginia Saturday night, that's their biggest win since Bedlam last year. And they'll be in a primetime game, and they'll have no more momentum in this recruiting class than they'll have if they end up beating West Virginia Saturday night. So it would be the optimal time to capitalize.
Yeah, you're doing it, West Virginia, a nationally broadcast game. Oklahoma State, a very good chance to be in the exact same time zone, time slot, and everyone's going to be excited. And you've got that whole week to go sell kids. And Friday night, they're going to be, all over the place recruiting, well, it'll be a little tricky because everybody's in the playoffs. So they're going to have to find when high schools are at their high schools. They've got to be on certain grounds. But they're going to hit the road hard over the next week, and it's perfect because if you come off that win and then you've got the game, that next week that probably is going to be the most ballyhooed game in the country because the SEC championship game is looking like garbage. So you've got a real chance to be the spotlight school or at one of, or I guess a school in the spotlight game. So that's huge for OU to be able to sell that and coming off that big win on the road if they can go get that done.
Thank God that game will be at 11 a.m. What a great conference.
Well, you know what? Even if they had a championship game with the Big Ten, the Pac-12 is on Friday night, but the Big Ten, the SEC, you're either going to be playing 2 games at 2:30 or 1 game at, you wouldn't have 2 games at night, I don't think. But, maybe you would because Fox and ESPN, there would still be a spot, yeah. If you have a championship game, I think It wouldn't be at 11, but it might be.
Yeah, this is the first year, or I know that College Game Day will not go to any Big 12 venues this season, and I know that's
which is stupid. They've got a top 10 matchup,
right? Which
they're going to Western Michigan.
You can talk about the politics and business involved in that, but at the very least, it's somewhat indicative of where this conference has come and where they are in the national spotlight. If you can't, I mean, there should be.
Here's the thing, though. As much as the Big 12 has been crapped on, they have 3 teams right now, and I'm not saying really legitimately vying to get into the college football playoff, but that's really 2 more teams than the Pac-12 has.
3 teams in the top 14, I guess.
Because, I mean, USC is up there, but they've got 3 losses. They've got no shot.
They're ahead of a 1-loss West Virginia.
Yeah, that is just pathetic.
It's unbelievable.
I actually asked Bob about that yesterday. He didn't bite. Like, you feel disrespected as a conference to have a 1-loss West Virginia
behind a 3-loss
USC team.
He wouldn't say anything.
No.
Come on, Bob.
Oh, really? He doesn't need to say anything. The committee loves OU. I mean, for what they are. They basically said, well, we didn't put West Virginia ahead of OU because OU's better.
Their offense is really good.
Yeah.
OU just needs to score 200 points the next 2 games, and that'll get them in the college football playoff.
We really like their offense, yeah.
These rankings show, by the way, the OU brand worth about a win a year. I mean, OU is having the same record or same season essentially as West Virginia and OSU, and they're ahead of them. If you look back last year, they have a 1-loss season, but they're in the college football playoff when the year before Baylor and TCU aren't. When you're OU, the Big 12 doesn't really hurt you that much because you're still OU, and you still kind of get that 1-win bump above the rest of the teams in the league, which Texas would have also if they actually fielded a competent.
There's a very obvious brand bias in the college football playoff.
Josh, let me switch back to recruiting for a second. I want to ask you about this. OU built the momentum that they are. I'm trying to think the right way to put this. That they're enjoying right now. The momentum they're enjoying right now was built last year, going to the college football playoff. And as happens, everybody's like, "Oh, why didn't go into the college football playoff pay off for OU?" It's because, as we have said to say many times, your recruiting class isn't built the year that you play. It's built the year before. So now that Oklahoma has a top 5 recruiting class, they're making a push. Even if they don't get to the college football playoff, if they go undefeated these next 2 games, they go to the Sugar Bowl, they play a really good SEC team, how much could that help down the stretch going to signing day with some of the big names?
I think it's huge. You talk about that matchup. I mean, especially because if OU goes to the Sugar Bowl, they're almost guaranteed to play like an LSU or some high-profile SEC team, Auburn maybe. So it's not going to be
Florida, which they could beat the crap out of Florida, which would be good for them.
Exactly. Well, you even look at LSU. That's a pretty good matchup for OU if you think about it. Where's OU's problem been? The secondary.
No, Josh.
What can LSU do?
I'm not going if LSU is going to be in the Sugar Bowl. I've done that before. It's a freaking nightmare.
Well, aside from Carey.
So, any other matchup you want to throw out there, do it. Ole Miss,
Okay.
Texas A&M, whatever.
If I could cover a Coach O press conference, though, that would be sweet. He is awesome.
Eddie, did I tell you I saw him a couple of weeks ago? I read at the Marvin Wilson Josh Rogers game. He was there on the sideline just hanging out, and he was like, I think I was doing something at halftime on my computer. I'm sitting there. I'm right by the gate where he walks out, and he's like, "What's up, big fella?" Like, I mean, he just says it in that voice, and you're like, "Hey, coach,"
That's Coach O.
I don't even know what to say.
That's awesome. He is badass.
It's like Eddie would run up and hug him if he saw him.
I'd give him a high five for sure.
Well, Eddie doesn't hug you unless you're wearing a Cubs jersey, so that doesn't work.
But I got to think. I mean, after the 1-2 start, and all those recruits being in during the Ohio State game, I mean, now if you go out and you run the table after that game, then everybody can kind of look and say, okay, well, that was a bad day in Norman, but Ohio State's the number 2 team or whatever in the playoff, and Oklahoma's really not that far behind.
Yeah, I think it's amazing what that, and not to, we'll move forward, but that missed kick against Houston did to their season. Like, you still feel like if that play doesn't happen, OU's an entirely different situation. And that Ohio State game doesn't look that bad. Oklahoma just had a bad night, and they got beat up front, and, that's the way it goes. But they lost to a really good team, so no harm, no foul. But
terrible defensive game plan.
Yeah, well, we can go into that, but we won't do that. But, going forward, I think Oklahoma, if you'd have told them that they could have closed like this, I don't know that they would have, I'm sure they would tell you they believed it. But there is a chance when you look around at their class and the spaces that are available, you could be talking about the best pair of bookend tackles OU's landed since like 2004. You going back a ways with the potential to land Adrian Ely and Chuck Filiaga. You look at what they've done at running back, quarterback, the receiver. They still need to kind of finalize with a guy like Marquise Brown would be a huge get in that slot receiver role where they clearly need somebody who's a playmaker. But, you look at how this is going with Oklahoma having 2 huge games to close the season and potentially a big bowl game. There's no reason OU shouldn't stay right where they are in the Rivals rankings, which is the number 3 team in the country, which is range that Oklahoma hasn't hit in over a decade.
By the way, for people that aren't on the scoop, we should take this moment to be whores. Check out Soonerscoop.com. Give us a sign up. Really good information throughout. I mean, you'll find out everything as it happens. You got all of us to tell you the ins and outs of things when they do happen. But Josh, kind of over the last recruiting weekend, some big names were in. Just give people out there maybe that aren't on the scoop a little bit of rundown of how things went for Oklahoma.
Yeah, Oklahoma had 4 official visitors in this weekend. 2 of them commitments, Justin Broyles and Addison Gums. Broyles is locked in as any commitment ever. That's set. With Gums, there had been some talk of a Texas A&M visit. I know Washington and UCLA are still trying to get him on campus for an official. But talking to Addison, I mean, he talked about it was the best visit he's ever taken. He loved it even more than the first one. And obviously, the first one was the primary deciding factor in him going to Oklahoma. So clearly, it went well. I think what's interesting is there had been some buzz that maybe his parents weren't as sold on him going to Oklahoma. But talking to some people, it sounded like they were all in. They really liked their time on campus. So I think more than ever, you can feel pretty good about where OU is with Addison Gums, who is clearly as an outside linebacker and one of the top outside linebackers in the entire country, is a huge deal for Oklahoma to reel him in. And he will be a January enrollee. So not only are you getting a very talented guy, but he'll be on campus for spring ball and could have a chance to make an impact next year. So I think that's a big deal. The 2 uncommitted guys who were there, Hunter Eccles, Rivals 100 defensive end from the Los Angeles area, USC commitment. Eccles is, from people I talked to on campus, he really liked the trip. His mom is for those that don't know, went to Oklahoma Christian, has a lot of connections, is actually, I don't know if you'd call her an OU fan, but she definitely has a lot of respect for Oklahoma. She's big on that. So I think that's something to keep an eye on. I still think USC is going to be very tough to beat, especially the way they're playing right now. But I think
you almost want to say you'd like to see USC just kick the crap out of UCLA this weekend, but kind of it would help them with Gums. But if he's in the fold strong,
yep,
you might almost hope for an upset.
I think more you need USC to crash and burn right now. I mean that's gonna, when they were really free falling, it was going to help OU. The only other guy, and I'll be kind of brief on him, is Latavius Brini, the defensive back from Miami. He and I are set to talk a little bit later today. He's been kind of mum about his visit. He hasn't said a lot. I do think he liked it a lot, but he's a very kind of kept to himself guy. He's not going to tip his hand much. And I didn't hear a lot of people saying, he was giving us some indications that maybe we're in a good spot. But the good news about that is, from what I'm telling you, there was some hints that Hunter Eccles is bigger on Oklahoma than maybe some people expected.
All right, West Virginia coming up. Let's talk a little bit about that before we get out of here. Oklahoma State's playing at TCU over the weekend. The possibility does exist that Oklahoma could win a Big 12 championship this weekend with an OSU loss and an OU victory. Anybody expect that to happen?
I think it might. OSU will play earlier in the day. And so
you'll know,
when it's possible that when OU and West Virginia kicks off, you'll know that that's a Big 12 championship game. So And TCU is
the problem is if West Virginia wins and then OU beats OSU, it'd be a share. Or if OSU beat OU, then OSU would claim to be Big 12 champs, but they'd be co-champs because they'd be. Or no, they wouldn't. Yeah, they would.
More fuel for Eddie in this conference. This talk right here. I mean, if you had a championship game,
you can't get a 3-way tie, I don't think, but you can get a 2-way tie.
It kind of screws it up because West Virginia will play next weekend, don't they? They have 3 games left, don't they?
Yeah, I think they're 1 game. They and Baylor were 1 game down from everybody else because they had early buys.
It could be a de facto. It would be a de facto big. Essentially, so if OSU loses early in the day, only Oklahoma would have the chance, to clinch a Big 12 title that night.
That's correct.
And if that were to happen, we need to have T-shirts made up that have moonshine in one hand and a Big 12 championship in the other.
Just make the little trophy.
Yeah. We'll have a ring on one finger.
Maybe you could have like
put a ring on Bob Stoops' middle finger.
What are those bottles that they have?
Like the jugs
with the XXX written on it.
Well, not the jugs, but the screw-on tops, like that you pickle stuff in.
Mm-hmm.
What are those?
Yeah, like
called?
mason jar.
Mason
almost?
jars. Yeah. You should just make a Big 12 champion mason jar.
That'd be sweet. I'm hoping to find a mason jar of moonshine before the game.
How about? Can you do that like on Friday? Maybe Sunday.
It's probably Saturday afternoon.
I bet you can get some from the stands down.
You don't need a whole jar.
No, not a whole jar. I just want to take a picture with it.
Oh, okay. I see what you're saying.
Maybe have a sip.
I think so. Eddie has a thing of moonshine. I could see him going David Blaine and like chewing the glass. Like they could get real aggressive.
Did you watch that special?
I did. I love David Blaine.
I watched
like
it.
That was cool. Yeah.
It freaked me out.
I mean,
it didn't happen,
near my favorite of his, but he's awesome.
The thing about the wedding rings to start it off was just, it blew my mind.
I think I tuned in right after that. I tuned in right when he started eating Arnold Schwarzenegger's wine glass.
The human frog thing, or the human aquarium thing, I saw he did that on Fallon the other night.
Yep.
With the roots, and you can watch it online. It's unbelievable.
I just don't understand it.
See, that's not a magic trick. That's just a freak of a human being.
Yeah, that stuff doesn't wow me. Like when he does the street magic and he does all the card tricks and stuff, I'm like mesmerized. That's when I'm all in with David Blaine. Like the stuff magic. He can do. You were talking about the Fallon thing where he did the guy had 5 cards on his chest and he threw the stack of 52 at him.
Yeah.
He's like, you got 7 more, and the guy counts out and there's 12. Like somehow magically underneath the guy's hand, 7 cards just appeared. That's ridiculous.
Yeah, like when he just sticks like a needle through his hand. That's okay. You're just crepey and crazy, and you have a weird body. But when he actually, when he does things that make you think,
you have a weird body. What?
Yeah, he sticks a needle through his hand, and so
Joe's body shaming. Body shaming.
Well,
that's great.
Well, not everybody can have a body like this guy. But I mean, if you're just sticking a needle through your hand, I mean, that's cool, I guess. But you're just like that weird kid in elementary school who plays with bugs. You're not like an actual magician. The other stuff's cool to me. The illusionist kind of stuff. I have a weird body that can do weird things. Go to the Guinness Book of World Records or something.
Joe looks like a hairy light bulb.
My friends always used to say I look like Seth Rogen and Brian McCann had a baby.
Maybe like a hairy pear.
Like the catcher, Brian McCann?
Yeah.
That's awesome.
So, matchup, Oklahoma, West Virginia. West Virginia has the best defense, and they have a really good secondary that's going to come up and hit. I think the biggest thing for Oklahoma in this game is the fact that Samaje Perine got to play a little bit last week, and he and Joe will both be available in this game. To me, that brings Westbrook into play. That brings Baker's arm into play. But you have those two guys. I don't think that as good as West Virginia is as a Big 12 defense, I think you have to be like Auburn or something if you really want to have a chance of slowing down OU's offense.
Lincoln Riley puts it really well. How can you double D.D. Westbrook when you have Joe Mixon and Samaje Perine and a guy like Mark Andrews who can play the slot/tight end? You just can't. With all those guys on the field together and Baker Mayfield's arm and ability to escape the pocket and how well the offensive line's been playing all year, there should be no reason for this offense not to put up points. no matter how good West Virginia is. There's just too many weapons.
It's certainly an opportunity. I mean, you want to go win a Big 12 championship and be this team that I think that they've been trying to be since losing to Ohio State and Houston. This is your chance to go make a statement. And I think offensively, they're going to be okay. Carey, I think that you bring up a good point, and Samaje is going to be. I think he's going to be Samaje on Saturday.
Yeah,
but
he got better and better as that game went on.
Yeah,
Saturday against.
And
Baylor.
there was a couple runs in the first half, even that him and Mixon both. They were a shoe tackle away from breaking one open. And I'm really excited to be up there for the atmosphere. It's going to be. I think the stadium's going to be awesome. But what defense is going to show up for Oklahoma? Is it going to be the half-assed Jordan Evans, or is it going to be the Defensive Player of the Week Jordan Evans that shows up on Saturday
fair question.
night?
That's fair.
Let me ask you, Stat Boy Joe. Last time Oklahoma was there, do you remember what? There was a touchdown combination that wasn't quarterback to receiver, running back, whatever.
Yeah. Deron Neal.
Threw a touchdown
threw it to
pass.
Trevor Knight.
That's correct.
Yeah.
I'd totally forgotten that until somebody brought that up the other day.
I did until I saw it on the old Sights and Sounds.
Oh, because you were going through it?
Yeah.
Was that a 3rd and goal, too?
It was, it was something like that. It was a big play, too.
Was it a reverse?
Yeah, they handed it off to P. Ryan. P. Ryan flipped it to Neal, and then Neal hit Knight on the back.
Knight ran almost like a little wheel route or something.
Yeah.
Yep. It was like at the 2 or 3 yard line or something. It was down by the end zone.
But yeah, I mean, that's going to be. I assume their students are in because it's not earlier in the year like it used to be.
Judging on some of the house signs that have been sent into Old Row, there are students in Morgantown and they're ready to roll.
We've never been there with a full complement of students in town and everything.
I know. I'm very excited.
I don't know what what do we have a weather update at the present? Let's see. We are recording this podcast 12:30 on Thursday afternoon.
Yeah, the high is 74 on Friday. The high on Saturday, it changes a little bit. It goes up to 57 degrees on Saturday and then decreasing throughout the rest of the day. A low of 27 Saturday night. Precipitation, though, is kind of the one thing that everybody's going to be watching. And Saturday, let's see here. No, 55 degrees. A steady rain in the morning, showers continuing in the afternoon. A morning high of 55 degrees with temps falling to near 45 by Saturday afternoon. And then Saturday night is when it gets interesting. 32 degrees, 60% chance of snow showers, mainly during the evening. Low of 32, winds from 10 to 20 out of the west. Chance of snow, 60%. But accumulation, less than 1 inch on Saturday night. So I think if anything, it's just going to be a wet, cold night. I think it's just going to be a wet, cold night. And I completely forgot that, in Baker, who I noted on the board on Tuesday night, I thought his media session on a scale of 1 to 10 cockiness, it was probably about a 13.5.
He was definitely in game mode. Like, I think earlier in the season, when things weren't going well, he was really good about just coming out and being really honest about their issues and their problems. Now that they have been playing this well, this long, I think he's so jacked up to go on the road and play in this environment. He's had his game face on since Monday.
It's been interesting to see, just how kind of outspoken, I guess, him and Riley have been. And even, I think, really all the players just have been about, we want this game to be at night. We want to play in this environment of us against the world.
It's because of the Baylor game last year.
Yeah,
that's why they want to do it. They point to that game as what really turned that team around and made them, somewhat ready to play in the college football playoff. I think they feel like if they can win this game in that environment, the fact that they're coming home for Oklahoma State, depending on what happens, that will get them more ready for the college football playoff than anything else.
Mm-hmm. They feed more power from the road than they do at home. They
doubt.
They love their home crowd. When the home crowd gets amped, they get amped. But when there's something about this team and on the road, you can tell that they just get more juice. That
they're
energy
so
brings
good. They
more
want
out
it to
of
be
them.
harder on offense.
Yeah,
they want the challenge.
Well, you know what it is. Look at the. I mean, you guys are talking about him. Look at the leader of that team. That is a brash dude that believes in it. Like he
seeks out
loves
adversity.
it when it rains down on him. Yeah, exactly. He loves that stuff, and I think the rest of the team feeds on it.
Yeah, and I think the play caller probably feeds off of it more too. Lincoln Riley, he loves that shit.
How different is Lincoln Riley and Baker Mayfield compared to Josh Heupel and Trevor Knight from a few years ago, personality-wise? I mean, it's
not even. I don't even know if you can compare. They're that far away from each other.
I'm trying to get this story out there, and Eddie's got the video ready. I've been kind of working on all week. Just Lincoln Riley has always embraced the fact that Baker Mayfield is really cocky. Like he hasn't tried to calm that down at all. Nobody has. Bob's even embraced it.
Yeah.
And it's like they've never had a quarterback like this at Oklahoma. They've never had anybody that was outspoken or did anything besides just celebrate in the end zone after a touchdown.
Guys, I was looking. You guys were talking about that Deron Neal touchdown the last time OU went out there, and it made me go back and look at the numbers. Listen to Trevor Knight's stat line from the last time they were at West Virginia. 16 for 29 for 55% completions, 205 yards passing, 0 touchdowns, and a pick, and a QB rating of 107.
Didn't he have 100 yards rushing, though?
Let's see. He had... No, he didn't. The Yahoo page I'm looking at shows him as not even having a carry, which doesn't sound right. But... it's accounted for 45 carries. It's even got Blake Bell with 1 carry for 2 yards.
What they did have in that game was an Alex Ross touchdown kickoff.
That was huge in that game.
I think that came right after. Did West Virginia had taken the lead or they had tied it up? One of the two. It was right before halftime, wasn't it?
Yeah,
right before half.
Something I wanted to also add was, Mayfield. He was so good against the blitz last week. It caught my eye that Pro Football Focus put this out earlier this week when Baylor blitzed. Mayfield was 8 for 8 for 195 yards last weekend.
Well, that's going to be the most difficult thing for him this week is that 3-3-5. They blitz and they drop and they blitz from the corners, safeties. They'll send, they'll go 0 at times. I mean, they'll do all kinds of crazy stuff. They'll go 0 at times and then they'll drop everybody, just not rush anyone. I mean, They give Tony Gibson has done a fantastic job, but he keeps everybody. That's going to be Baker's biggest challenge is not getting lulled into thinking, certain things on the field.
It also helps too with having Pirine back when they can get him and Mixon on the field. That little screenplay to Mixon could be a really deadly play this week when they bring the blitz.
Yeah. He's a guy that you can't account for. I mean, the special thing about Joe Mixon is not really the big plays that he has. It's the stuff that he does, the yards he can get. If you have a hard time running the ball, if you have a hard time passing the ball, he can just be a little safety outlet that can pick you up some yards when you really need it to keep you out of long down and distance situations.
All you have to do is flare him out. Just have him as a safety blanket. And if the linebacker doesn't get out into the flat quick enough, all Baker Mayfield has to do is dump it down. He picks up 15 yards, and that just kind of, bam, there's your spark. There goes the offense all of a sudden. And that's something, when people were Abdul Adams might not have the spark these other guys do. Well, you're right, he doesn't. These guys, Joe Mixon is borderline superhuman. So you can just get him the ball in any kind of space, and in one-on-one situation, even in a one-on-two situation, chances are he'll turn into a positive play for your offense just because he's that good.
Look, this is Oklahoma's biggest challenge since Ohio State. And they haven't faced anybody that's this good on defense, I don't think, maybe since Ohio State. So is this team just missing a few pieces from being a great team? I think we're going to find that out. Maybe this team resembles more, when it's all said and done, that team that lost to Houston at the beginning of the year. Or maybe I think they've gotten better. I think defensively having Caleb Kelly becoming a bigger part of the defense has been good for them. I think Stephen Parker's playing really well. Jordan Parker has helped them figure things out and stabilize them. So I do think they're better. They're thinner on the defensive line than they've been. But at the end of the day, they lose this game, and you're just going to say, well, this just wasn't a good enough team.
You're right back to where you were after the Ohio State and Houston.
Well, you're
losses.
not 1-2. I mean, you've done some good things. You're still have a potential of sharing a Big 12 championship.
Yeah, but I think for the most part, a lot of people will say that you really haven't done anything because you beat a bunch of crap teams in between those losses, and when you were faced with another decent test, you lost again.
Yeah.
So
they need to win. Yeah.
You bring up Caleb Kelly. We mentioned it. Everybody needs to check out the video that we have on the board with him. By far one of my favorite interviews.
Good kid.
Probably will end up being one of my favorite Oklahoma players before it's all said.
Well, you know what's
done.
weird is you see him on the field, and in his uniform, he does look kind of long and skinny, but up close,
he's big.
He's put on some serious weight since I saw him in Baltimore. He's got muscles on his shoulders, like I don't know, like his shoulder blades.
He looks very, very good physically.
Part of that's how fluid he moves, what kind of athlete he is. He moves so fluidly, he looks like he's smaller than he actually is because he's that good of an athlete. If he was clunkier, then you might think, oh, yeah, he's a little bigger. But he's just that, I mean...
Whatever they're doing is working.
This is why
whatever Tiffany Bird is doing is working wonders with him.
This is also why you bring in 5 stars, or why 5 stars can change programs, is because they can do anything, basically. Or a guy like that can. They can be versatile, they can be big, they can be fast, they can be strong. OU has too many guys that just fit a niche that they can just kind of, we need him to do this, and Caleb Kelly can do everything.
And he's playing well, so that's good.
All right, we're out of time. We got to get out of here. Glad that we could get a podcast up a little bit earlier for you guys this week. Eddie and I will be heading to Morgantown. Hopefully we'll get back. That's my only worry. I don't care about getting out of there, but I hope we can get back.
Now it's like Sunday is like 40 degrees, and the precipitation is really taking a drag off. Is that a meteorologist term?
No.
A drag off?
No.
Just hang in Morgantown a few extra days and hit the casinos.
If we have to hang in Morgantown, I'm going. Hopefully they have a Fiji house and they'll take in a brother and we'll just drink and.
Dude, is there like I always want to know, is there like a handshake you would do, or like a something to let them know you're actually a
Can't
Fiji?
tell you that, Joe.
Oh, okay. Oh. So, wait. You can't tell me if there's anything?
Can't tell you that.
Oh, man.
It's a foundation of the brotherhood secrecy.
Don't you know anything, Joe?
Not about fraternities. That's what I was trying to know.
There is a handshake.
There is a handshake?
They all have them. There's
may or may not.
Josh, you want to come up with a handshake of our own that we won't tell Eddie about?
Be very GDI.
Very GDI. It would be. All right, Eddie, the elitist fraternity brother. That's his parting shot.
40 degrees and cloudy on Sunday, so now I think we're going to be okay.
Okay, nobody cares now. They just want their damn interviews after the game. All right, Eddie?
We'll get them.
All right. It's going to be a fun one. I'm glad that we're going to be off for Thanksgiving next week, but I'm looking forward to this one last big road trip. Thanks to Joe Duvall, who's in studio, Eddie Radosevich. Josh, any parting shots here?
No. Why do I always have to have the parting shots, man? I think we know that we just need to give that mic to Eddie for like 30 seconds. Just let him yell at someone.
Eddie, you want to say anything horrible here? I got
trying to think of something.
I got a cussing robot that can do it for you.
Well, it's like, Eddie brings the fire out, and then Josh brings the wisdom. It's a nice close. Like old man Josh.
There's really just nobody to hate on this week.
Type in cursing robots on YouTube and just watch it. It's glorious. All right, here's our project. Go to our iTunes page and give us a review, or our Stitcher page, or our Google Play page. We really appreciate you guys giving us all those great reviews. And also, sign up for Soonerscoop.com if you're not. Contact Josh at Soonerscoop.com. While Eddie and I are on the road, if you guys want a special, maybe we can do something for you. So do that. Josh at Soonerscoop.com. Josh, are you okay with me putting that responsibility on you?
That's fine. I got it. I'm a email whore, so we got it.
Josh will not hear this, but we're going to end the day. We're just going to pretend like all your names are Kevin. And these are the cursing robots.
See you later, Kevin. See you tomorrow, face. Hope a robot doesn't burn your fucking house down.